But moving on to the second power skill, what's that and how will you define that?
Yeah, the second one is planning. And when you're starting something new, I was saying, you want to do everything. You want to, set up your company, you want to hire, you want to set up processes, you want to reach out to clients, do business development. You want to do everything. Right? So planning helps you decide where you need to focus your energies. Right? So if you think about yourself, you're one person that has a few hours in the day. Right? You can't work 24 hours a day. Right? So how many hours can you work? Figure that out. Then you decide, okay, so if these are all the things that you need to do, what are the priority areas? Right? Maybe registering your company is number one because there are regulatory requirements. Maybe you need to apply for GST. You need to do that. Right? So those automatically become higher priority. Then you need to figure out, I need income. So my next priority has to be business development. Right? I'll figure out processes as we go along. Right? That could be the decision making, but that's how you have to figure out. And that's why I say planning is really important. Now, a lot of people are building products. Right? So when do you decide that your product is MVP? That requires planning. You need to figure out that how are you going to approach that definition of MVP. And then once you have that, what are you going to do? How are you going to launch? What's your launch strategy? Who are your first set of customers? All of this encompasses planning.
How do you make sure that you don't go into analysis paralysis and actually it's the time to stop planning and start executing? What's that point?
Yeah, so it depends on what you're trying to do. So if for example you're in a domain that you're already comfortable with, you've spent many years, right? So your analysis would be much shorter. If it's a whole new domain, you have no experience, you haven't done this before, then sure, your analysis would be longer. You do more research, figure out more things. The best way that I think you can do the analysis and restrict it from going too much is to time box it. Right?
Got it.
And you should say that, I am going to spend the next 2 weeks in only doing analysis. It might sound like, oh my God, it's 14 days. But the value that planning brings up front is very important because you don't want chaos later. It helps you reduce the chaos that you have later. Right? So when then you go and talk to customers and say that, I've done this planning, I've done this research, here are the stats that prove, that's a whole different conversation to say, I did a couple of Google searches and this is what Google says, I got this on Wikipedia. It's a different conversation.
So talking of chaos, a lot of us here do a lot of things in teams, right? And planning becomes even more important when you're working in a team. Ab tak kya hua hai, whatever we've done, you just end up digressing from whatever you wanted to do because everyone in the team wants to contribute to the plan or has an idea or wants to do this or that. So how do you make sure that your plan is compatible with teams, and how do you effectively plan for a team and work out whatever you wanted to do?
Yeah, so I don't know if you remember, but I did this session on team dynamics.
Yes.
Right? Creating good teams. And part of it is when you come together as a team, you have to agree on what are the principles that you're going to work on. What is your common vision? What is your common goal that all of you are working towards? That becomes the anchor. And when you agree on principles, and those principles could be that, everyone should bring one idea every meeting, as an example. No mobile phones in our meetings, as an example, So once you agree on those principles, everyone that is part of making these principles are already in agreement. But if you make those principles by yourself and then say, hey, you know what, I've decided this is how our team is going to work, they have no co-ownership or agreement in that because they haven't contributed.
How do you convince so you, as a leader, you have certain vision. How do you communicate to the same thing to your, colleagues, to your employees and everyone? Because it's easier, you're a drive, self-driven person. How do you communicate the drive to other people?
Yeah, so it's about taking people on a journey. Right? So when you set up a team, you have to take people on that journey and give them the ownership, the flexibility to be part of that journey. Right? Whenever I hire people, right, I say that I'm hiring you, I trust you to do the job. Now, I'm not going to micromanage. I'm not going to tell you do this way unless you ask for that help. Right? So it's about giving the ownership back to the person who's actually doing the task. Right? And taking them on the journey that this is our vision. And I do collective visioning workshops where the entire team comes together to decide what is the vision for the team. As long as it aligns to the organization vision, you're great. right? You have to align it to the organization vision, but the team can decide their own vision, how they want to work, what are their principles, and you will always see that there is more ownership in how the team works if it's done that way versus if I come in and say this is how we're going to work.
And how do you delegate in the process of planning? There
Yeah.
are certain things that you don't plan for yourself, you plan it for somebody else. So how do you, in that case, how do you delegate that thing? Is there any science behind delegation that you follow?
When I'm giving somebody something to do, I help them define the plan. I don't plan it for them. So, for example, if you remember my whiteboard in my office, whenever I gave somebody
I
something
have a
to
photo
do,
of that, yeah.
great. So I would ask them, you were doing a project, right? And I asked you, what is the deadline?
Right.
What are the steps you're going to follow? I'm giving you the task, I'm delegating it to you, but you are deciding the plan. If you want help and support, I'm there to help.
Right.
But I'm not going to say you have to do it by so and so date, unless, of course, there's a regulatory or a compliance requirement. But you are the person doing it, you have to define it based on your capabilities.
That way is, I think, that is one way of giving ownership back to the people who are doing it and get them more excited to do things for you. By making them feel like it belongs to them, and I think that's a really good strategy that a lot of people need to employ.
And it does belong to them, right? I keep saying this, that I can sit here and say that I've helped co-create this teaching studio because Plaksha gave me that freedom, that flexibility and trust to say, yeah, you can do it, right? So why can't I do the same for my team, right? If I've given something, they're not doing it for me, by the way, they're doing it for the organization, but they own that, right? So the team owns the amazing infrastructure that they have set up, right? So if I'm delegating you a task, I'm also delegating the responsibility of it, that hey, this is now yours. For example, we sit here and say I've helped create this teaching studio, that has been delegated to me.
Got it.
Right? So you delegate the responsibility, and if you think about it carefully, we delegate to leaders, but leaders should then delegate to others as well, right? Do the task and take responsibility. It's now your baby. Right? Enjoy the fruits of your labor, right? Enjoy the successes.
So we've spoken about your meticulous planning, and then that usually leads to things going right. Has anything gone wrong for you?
So planning doesn't mean that it will always go right. Sure, things do go wrong, right? But plans help you reduce the level of how much it can go wrong.
And planning also encompasses risk management if certain things
exactly
go.
And a plan B. So a small example that I talk of often is that when I'm doing a presentation, right, I'll always have a plan B. What if the projector doesn't work? What am I going to do?
Really?
Yeah.
What's the plan B?
What if electricity goes? What am I going to do?
What's your plan for in that situation then?
Then I won't use the slides. But my speech or my delivery will be so well prepared that I can do it without slides.
And you suffix the lack of got it.
Yeah. Right? What if the battery on my clicker runs out?
Then I know you use your phone
exactly,
as a slider.
Right? So you should always think of that plan B. That's all planning, right?
Got
right?
it.
If it doesn't go to plan, what is your fallback option? Right? And in the IT industry, there's always this thing called what is your fallback plan?
Yeah.
When you're trying to take something live or an update you're trying to do live, right? So, late at night, developers will be trying to do that implementation. But there will always be a rollback plan. That is planning, right? If you don't have that rollback plan, when things go wrong, nobody knows what to do. Nobody has any guide to say, this is what we need to do.
Can you take us back to a situation where you planned certain things you planned certain things and then it didn't go as you thought of, and you were in a very different position ki kya kare,
You didn't have a fallback plan.
You didn't have a fallback plan.
So I can't remember a one, to be honest. But I remember the reason I have learned this is because I saw my boss in a previous job. I saw my boss struggle because she did not have a fallback plan. And I was helping her do a visioning workshop with very senior leaders in an organization. And there was a lot of pressure. We were trying to do something and we were trying to get them to do this visioning, and they did not have a lot of time. There was a lot of pressure, but she was running it and I was helping her. I was learning from her. And I saw that we didn't, and I didn't realize it, but we didn't have a backup plan. And so when things went wrong, when we started losing the audience, we didn't know what to do. Right? Luckily, she had the presence of mind to say, let's take a coffee break. And in that coffee break, she and I figured out a backup plan, and we were ready to go after the coffee break. But it would have been so much better if we had gone in having a backup plan.
Got it.
But that's where I learnt it from, by the way. Right? I learnt it because I saw it, and I did not want to be in that situation.